Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reverence for Reverie. It's so good to be with you again. And today we're tuning into the energies of September. I'll be doing this through a symbolic lens, and I'm guided by a few oracles cards today that I pulled for this collective. This is something that I like to offer each month just as a way to orient us, not in a sense of like forecasting or predicting or anything like that, but by feeling into the deeper undercurrents that maybe are shaping our inner and outer experiences at this time. So, um, like I said, it's a way that I enjoy living symbolically and listening more closely to what's here and what's coming. And it helps me really commune with my own unconscious experience. So my hope is that it gives you something to reflect on, to maybe anchor into, or simply just to carry with you as you move through the month. All right, so let's get into it. I pulled 3 cards this month. Each are from a different deck, and each one is offering a distinct layer of its own meaning. So from the Wisdom of the Shadow Oracle by Jenny Hahn and Jessica Richetti, we received the Rage card. From the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit deck by Kim Krans, this is the pocket version, we received Hummingbird. And from the Native Spirit Oracle by Denise Linn, we received Vision Quest. So when I laid these cards out side by side, they definitely didn't feel random. I mean, when I was in the process of pulling them, I was like, Rage and Hummingbird. That's interesting. I wouldn't expect that combination. But as I sat with the imagery and kind of let it wash over me, it started to become a little more clear, even as I just kind of wrote out what was coming to mind as I looked at them. So, yeah, they ended up feeling more like a journey, a descent maybe into something very powerful, a pivot more towards some agility, and maybe a path forward that is marked more by our soul. So let's go ahead and deep dive, move through each of them one by one. And I'm going to start with Rage, the Rage card. And this is a card, but it's really a feeling that many people are instinctively wanting to avoid. I mean, if I'm being honest, I even wanted to, because when I first picked up this deck, this card immediately fell out. And usually if I'm doing just my own card pull, I will still use that card because I take that as a message. Like there was a reason that it immediately fell out. But this was me just kind of pulling them out of the box. And I'm like, Rage. I don't know. Maybe it's not this time. So I put it right back in the deck. I started to shuffle. And as I was shuffling, it fell out again on its own. It was put into the middle. As I was shuffling, it came out again. So I obviously could not ignore that. A second time, the same card after being shuffled, falling out, there was something in it. So I just went with it. So we are often taught that rage is dangerous or shameful, destructive even. And certainly if you are in any like spiritual circles, that it is an unspiritual thing. But I believe that rage at its core is a passionate energy. It is life force, and it is a sacred heat from my perspective. Something that says, something's got to give, something needs to change, something must change. And in psychoanalytic terms, when we repress or we disavow our rage, which means to kind of cut it off or exile it, it actually doesn't disappear. It just ends up getting rerouted. And a few examples of how that can kind of get rerouted is that it can turn inward towards like harsh self-criticism or shame. It can collapse into the sort of sedative numbing of depression. And it can also be projected outward as pessimism and nihilism. Um, it can also just leak out sideways in general as sarcasm, resentment, control, envy. There's all kinds of ways that it can kind of leak out. So rage, when it is unmetabolized, it does still find a way to speak. And it's often in the language of some sort of collapse or constraint. But when we really allow rage to move through us consciously, when we can be with it, it becomes fuel. It can become clarity. It can become momentum, and it certainly can become the nutrient-rich soil of change and transformation. I'm thinking about how, rage feels fiery, and how sometimes the best thing to do for a body of land, for example, is to set it on fire, because that creates the nutrients in the soil for the next crop, for growth. And I don't think we often think of our own experience with fiery energy like anger and rage as something that can actually also produce growth. I'm hoping to turn that around for you, though. I'm also thinking about how I've actually processed a lot of my own rage through poetry. It's been one of the safest access points for me to be able to just share everything that I feel and to put it all on a page. And I don't have to end up sharing it with anyone, but it always allows me to really look at what is going on below the surface. I have a whole process that I go through when I write poetry, and I'd be happy to share that at another time. But I thought I'd share one of my shorter rage poems here as an example. And I want to give a little context to this. I had done a poetry immersion, not this past summer, but the summer before. And I went into it really hoping that I was going to get like a variety of poetry and, the whole range of different feeling. And what was so interesting is rage was really moving through me back then. Some of it very quiet and subtle and under the surface. It was unconscious. Some of it was a little more clear to me. But I went through that whole immersion, and I would say over half of my poems ended up being about rage and anger. And so that says a little something about what I was going through back then. But it's also, like I said, it's how I realized that poetry becomes such a safe access point for me to actually really process, and some really potent, powerful, transforming poetry came out of that for me. So here's a short one that gives you just a little snippet into what that was like for me. So today, I am a woman of rage and sorrow, letting burning tears run down my face as lava rivers run through my veins. I have erupted many times before, each time painful, each time a release of volcanic magnitude, thundering across the ground. So that's really simple. It's very short. And I actually wrote that poem one day because I was feeling so creatively blocked. And as soon as I was able to actually go into that poem, like I went right into the energy of where I was blocked. I wrote another poem directly after it that was so powerful for me, touched on some deep grief connected to a dream I had had. And so this is what I'm saying, that like when we really allow ourselves to just be with what is, rage was apparently there. It was blocking, and probably was blocking me from the grief that I was about to be addressing. But when we allow ourselves to be with what is, it actually ends up moving through us. So personally, this rage energy did show up for me in the weeks leading into the Resonance Rising Summit. I was feeling frustrated and angry and really rageful, like I'm saying, at the state of things, just both nationally and globally. at how performative and so, so fucking disconnected so much of leadership, really everywhere, not just in politics, has become. And at how many of us are really aching for something real, but feel completely starved for depth and truth and real resonance. And instead of stuffing all of that down, which I certainly could have done, and I've done before, I've done a lot of that in the past, I actually let it move through me. And what emerged was a vision, a new kind of leadership summit that I knew had to exist and that I was going to bring through me. So you see, being with what was, the rage that I was feeling, the irritation, the frustration of what I'm seeing play out on political stages and nationally and globally, and not just political stages, even corporate companies and the people that I sit with who have been affected by these corporations and their leadership. It moved through me and created clarity on where my next path was going to go. So I want to offer this to you. Where might your rage be pointing to something sacred? Something that can only be brought through you in the way that you specifically will bring it. And what clarity or boundary is trying to emerge through your irritation, your fatigue, or your fire. Next came the hummingbird. And this is one of the tiniest creatures in the animal kingdom, but also one of the fastest and most agile. A hummingbird can fly forward, backward, sideways, upside down, and even hover in stillness. Its wings beat around 80 times per second, but sometimes even more than that. And for its size, it is one of the strongest flyers in the entire natural world. That image really struck something in me. I think there's something here, a message about the power of small, intentional shifts, of being attuned to the moment enough to change direction when it's needed without losing momentum. When this image becomes paired with rage, I think that the hummingbird reminds us that forward motion doesn't always look like force. It can look like refinement, like knowing when to rest and when to pivot and when to sip from a different nectar, if you will. By the way, I'd like to pause with that because these hummingbirds are also a very good lesson in self-care as well. They're essentially nourishing themselves all day long to sustain their weight and their movement. Energetically, what that tells me is that September is not about blasting ahead blindly. It's about precision, about choosing what truly feeds you, what truly nourishes you, and allowing the body and the intuition, the nervous system, to guide you towards coherence. And this is exactly what I mean whenever I talk about field work, energy field work. It's subtle, but it's very powerful. Finally, we have the Vision Quest card. In many indigenous and earth-based traditions, a vision quest is a solo journey. It's a sacred rite of passage that is often venturing into unknown terrain. A vision quest is also a ritual of becoming. You go into the wild, into the unknown, and therefore into yourself, which also may mirror that sense of the wild and the unknown. And there is no promise of what is going to be revealed. It's just the trust that something will be. And you don't go on a vision quest to get what you want out of it. You go to shed what you no longer are and to meet your soul in its rawest, most unmasked form. Really to be emptied so that the true vision can find you. And it's not about chasing some sort of success or a particular kind of clarity. It is about willingness to encounter truth. I want to say that again. A willingness to encounter truth. Not seek it, not find it, but to encounter it, which implies the truth comes to you. It comes unbidden. if you are open enough. And I believe that is a soul truth that we're talking about. So you enter this sort of liminal space where you're not meant to find answers, although they may very well come, but rather to just let the noise fall away so that a deeper knowing can actually arise from within. And to me, this card is really speaking to where many of us are right now. There is this hunger for something that is more aligned, but the old maps, they just aren't working. The roles that we have played, they don't fit any longer. And this path forward is not fully formed yet. In fact, it is actively crumbling as we walk the path. This is really uncomfortable terrain for many high achievers, leaders, visionaries, and healers that I've worked with. It's tempting to really want to rush toward the next goal or strategy. And hey, I get it. I've been there too. Sometimes I still feel that pull. But what if this month is actually inviting you to pause on purpose? To remember that the space between the stories is just as sacred. The space between the chapters, the space between the phases of life, and that who you become in that void shapes what comes next. This card is telling me that September is likely not a month of answers for us, but it is a month of more attunement. And you may feel like you're walking that alone. But I would encourage you to perhaps frame that as a sacred kind of solitude, the kind that allows for the emptying, allows for what may arise from within, and that encounter with soul truth. So when I take all of these into account, for the month of September, here is what I'm sensing. Of course, rage is not the problem. Suppressing it is. And so when you allow your fire to actually move through you with presence, it becomes a clearing force and even the nutrient-rich soil of what comes next. Agility and coherence matter a lot more than hustle. And so you'll need to tune into what is really nourishing to you in this month and be willing to shift with precision and flexibility. And most of all, honor the vision quest that you are on. You don't need all of the answers to be walking towards your truth. You just need a willingness to actually listen and to listen inward. From a psychoanalytic lens, I think this month is a month where maybe more repressed emotions may begin to surface. And with them, there are opportunities to relate differently to our own inner lives. If I take these cards into account, that might mean that the discomfort of feeling something like rage, for example, and actually being with it this time, it is the vision quest journey where then you are emptying or moving through so that more vision, more clarity, more coherence, more agility is made more possible. And from a quantum perspective, we would use the terminology of this being maybe a frequency calibration, the willingness to refine your energy field so that you can become the match for what your soul has already called in. And we cannot match those frequencies if what we have are some things that we are stagnating and suppressing and pulling and pushing down and getting in the way. So that said, as we move into September, I really invite you to ask yourself, where is the fire alive in me? What shift is my body or my soul asking for? And what sacred unknown might I be avoiding that is actually my next becoming? You know, this month may not come with big revelations or big results, but it does hold the quiet power of recalibration, of tending to your truth before it's ever even spoken, and of embodying your next chapter before it even becomes visible, before it arrives. I will be back soon with more, but for now, I hope that this reading guides you inward in the month of September. And if you're new here, maybe you joined us from the Resonance Rising Summit or off of my Instagram platform or something that way, welcome. You're invited to stay in this field with me. You can always join my email list or sign up for the Soul Circle Masterclass that will be coming soon. It is called The Architecture of Inner Wealth, and we'll be exploring some of this work more deeply. Again, thank you so much for being here. Every symbol carries a map. Every pause holds a promise for you. And every month is a new chance to move from resonance and not reaction. I will see you soon. And as always, let the reverie lead you.